So imagine making 50K a year, but a few years later you're making 90K. However, your savings rate didn't change at all. Why is this? So everyone loves to tout sort of how the first 100K in investing is the hardest thing, but let's sort of switch gears and discuss like why it can be so difficult and how it's inextricably tied to lifestyle inflation. So this 100K quote, it is constantly repeated in financial circles. Everybody's sort of parroting the same point that like, oh, at 8 to 10%, everything changes after 100K. Just trust, bro. Once you hit 100K, everything's going to be different. And like, while it is tied to how you set up your investing habits, compounding, yes, it is the star of the show. Discipline is always the most difficult part because everybody quits sort of see before they see the real results because they either lack discipline or maybe there's some sort of like outlandish other factor that's affecting that, be it like life, emergency expenses, that kind of thing. Because, you know, when you're starting out investing, when you're in your 20s, $500 a month may not seem like much in terms of realizing your financial goals, but after 5 years, that could be 50K depending on market returns. Now, I know what you're thinking. That isn't life-changing money. It doesn't feel like you're getting rich, but like that's the problem. Early investing is supposed to be boring and you aren't going to see these huge returns. You can't just, start investing, make a sector play and then gas up the fact that you made 20% in the year. The S&P can make that, assuming it's like a good year, it can do that. So early investing is boring, but at the same time, something is happening and there is a foundation being built, both mentally and in your nest egg. Because returns do not show up evenly over time. Compounding, as we know, is extremely backloaded because almost all of your early portfolio growth is going to come from your own contributions. The capital that you inject into your accounts is going to be some of the biggest gains that you see in your account, especially if you're looking at a 401k. It can, in those first couple of years, I know it looks like this for me, it very much looks like a staircase. And while, that might seem a little disheartening at first, those mutual funds that you're invested in maybe aren't really getting the returns that you would like to start seeing, in order to keep you motivated. I know for me, it's motivating to see my accounts perform. At the same time, you have to remember that it is a backloaded process. Eventually, your investments will start to do more work than you do. So for example, if you constantly reinvest those dividends, if you're constantly, making sure that you are remaining consistent on those investments, capital appreciation in the form of compound interest, you have to remember this, it will outdo capital contribution. But that takes so much time. It takes so much time and it can be sort of dejecting. I know for me, I know my portfolio is doing well. I know I've maxed out a couple of years of my Roth IRA. I know that I'm contributing well into my taxable brokerage, but when does that start to ramp up? When am I going to see those meaningful returns? And when am I going to see those things that are sort of more motivating to me? Because it's not really motivating to not see those kind of returns, because I feel like I'm definitely stretching myself thin. I feel like I'm definitely contributing a lot. And I'm certainly feeling the absence of my paycheck, when that money goes and gets invested. But, like with anything disciplined, it's so hard, man, but you just got to let go and trust the process, because once the snowball gets big enough, gravity or, compound interest in this case will help you out. But, it is true. Investing in your 20s is brutal because your income is hopefully at the lowest in your career. You might have student loans. You might be sort of figuring out your career and what you want to do. You might be learning basic financial habits. You might be starting up a side hustle. You might be, potentially starting a business or engaging in your first business partnerships with friends. So you're trying to build wealth at the same time that you're trying to build your life. So it's definitely going to be slower and it's definitely going to feel a little more difficult because plenty of people will invest for a few years. They will get started and then they won't see insane returns because maybe their friends are doing better than them. Keeping up with the Johnsons, as they say, right? Everybody wants to do as good as the guy next door. If the guy next door is a nice car, I want a nice car because I feel entitled to it because in my opinion, that I work hard. But, a lot of people will invest for a few years and won't see those insane returns, so they'll assume that investing doesn't work. I know several people like this who just refuse to sort of broadly index the markets. They refuse to trust in compound interest, and they think that they can therefore outsmart the market. I guarantee you most of those guys are not outperforming the S&P 500. And if they are outperforming the S&P 500 over a long time, their last name might be Pelosi. So it is hard to sort of sit on the sidelines and choose the less exciting opportunity, especially when there's things like day trading, crypto, sports betting, options. But wealth building is not fast. It's consistent. So that's why indexing is boring. Broad index fund investing every month is not fun, but that's the thing. You're not trying to predict the next stock and you're not timing the market. You're accumulating an asset. It isn't just something that you just put your money into innately and sort of trust in this like base concept that the market goes up. We're talking about hundreds or thousands of companies, depending on how diversified you are, creating real value and creating real wealth. And you are having a slice of that pie. You're just taking a slice of the everything pie, which, unless the entire market tanks, frankly, I think we'll have bigger things to worry about than whether or not you're properly diversified or whether or not you're getting, the biggest large cap or tech return during the tech boom. And if that's what you want, then by all means invest into it. But just understand that broad indexing is the slow winner. It does work. Slow and steady wins the race. I feel like, in this age of social media, in this day and age, it's so hard to keep that in mind because lifestyle inflation does hit hard with this. Spending increases as you make more money. It's true. I'm guilty of this too. But you need to make sure that you identify a good baseline for yourself and then invest from there. Because remembering what compounding can do, eventually it will outlast and outperform the capital that you can contribute. Because let's say you can only do 5K a year. Well, once you hit that 100K, hopefully after, however long that takes, eventually 8% of 8K of 100K, as we know, is 8K. And 8% of 500K is 40K, and million, it's 80K, and so on and so forth. The snowball effect will become obvious eventually. But if it feels like progress is slow, it's because you need to focus on something a little less tangible. The habits that you're building, the discipline that you're fostering, and getting that snowball rolling. That's the most important part because early investing is boring. It's not going to be life-changing money, and it won't feel like you're getting rich. But if you're saving consistently, you're investing consistently, the results will be slow, but something is happening because that foundation is being built. So just remember, even though you're trying to build your life and get everything together, it's important to start the habits now, even if it doesn't feel like it. Because once that momentum kicks in, things will start accelerating a lot quicker than most people will expect. You need to remember to never quit before compounding has time to work. And as always, never give up. So don't let it happen to you. It will happen to many people. They will fall by the wayside and they will stop investing and they will give up. Don't let that be you. Stay in the market, stay consistent, stay investing. All right, guys, stay classy. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, stay easy, guys. Bye.